We all understand that Rolling Stone is not a typical publication that the U.S. military deals with.
You got to wonder what Rolling Stone did to win over the general's confidence, because its reporter's certainly not somebody with a track record.
I look at General McCrystal doing an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, and somehow his people are expressing surprise that it would boomerang. Hello, Rolling Stone.
First of all, I just dropped my microphone, which has nothing to do with this. But second of all, I got to tell you about watching the coverage today of this Michael Hastings, General McCrystal story. That Rolling Stone is not the problem here. The issue is not Rolling Stone. The issue is not Michael Hastings. I have been the beneficiary of this kind of criticism before, where the news outlet itself gets faulted for what the interview subject said to that news outlet. I mean, think about this. Are we really supposed to believe that if General McCrystal and his staff had said these same things to some other reporter that they said to Michael Hastings, that some other reporter wouldn't have published those remarks for political reasons? Seriously? What Michael Hastings and Rolling Stone got with this piece that has turned the war upside down is a scoop. And it is jealousy, or it is a really craven cynicism about what journalism is for, that's driving criticism of Rolling Stone for getting this scoop. Michael Hastings has been a guest on this show a number of times. Earlier today, I spoke with him from Afghanistan. Joining us now from Kandahar is Michael Hastings, an accomplished and experienced freelance journalist who has reported from a number of war zones. Full disclosure, Mr. Hastings is also a friend of mine. His last book is called I Lost My Love in Baghdad, but it is his most recent article for Rolling Stone, The Runaway General, that has turned the news upside down today. Michael Hastings, thank you so much for your time. Mike, tell me what kind of access you were allowed to General McCrystal and his inner circle for this article.
I basically ended up with unprecedented access to General McCrystal on my trip to Paris and then to Afghanistan. But essentially, it was unprecedented access, so I was able to sit inside the room with General McCrystal as well as spend time with him in his downtime.
And in terms of his inner circle and the degree to which they spoke freely and in quite impolitic terms about other people involved in the war effort and in American leadership, did they know it was on the record? Were they comfortable voicing those things knowing that you were a reporter?
There were no conditions set before I began the profile, and it was my understanding that it was all on the record. And that's why I continued to report on them for the following number of weeks.
Michael, I know that in the piece, I mean, General McCrystal comes across as incredibly impolitic, but not in an unflattering light. You definitely portray him as a true believer in counterinsurgency. But counterinsurgency means military force combined with a lot of non-military force. And he and his inner circle talk complete smack about everybody on the non-military side. So how does that make sense? How do they reconcile that?
Well, I think and one of the things about General McCrystal and whether or not he's in politics, just look at his public statements. What he said recently about Margaret, which was an operation in southern Afghanistan, was that it was a bleeding ulcer. If he's saying that in public about the war effort, what do you think he's saying in private? I think that's a big issue in terms of counterinsurgency, the relationship between the civilian and military side. I think that's always very tricky in these counterinsurgency operations. And I think part of the problem is that though the military says they actually buy into these political solutions, their most preferred solution is one to use force, and then what they're sort of inherently good at.
Sort of a hollowed-out counterinsurgency idea that you talk about a lot of non-military force, but maybe it's not as important a part of it when it comes down to it. You described, Michael, the hardcore proponents of counterinsurgency, of COIN, as having a cultish zeal, the COINDAnistas, which is something that we've talked about in the past. Is there something about the idea of counterinsurgency that essentially requires people to be disdainful of outside views about the wider impact of it, about the difficulty of selling it politically?
I was just rereading David Halberstam's The Best and the Brightest, and one of the scenes describes as Kennedy in his body in 1961 being very excited about all these new theories of counterinsurgency. I think then one has to look at where the counterinsurgency theorists draw their inspiration from, and most of the examples they draw from are not very promising. The French in Algeria in 1962, and then the U.S. in Vietnam in 1975. Both ended in defeat. Now, they claim that they were military victories, or if they would have just done this or that right, it all would have worked out. But in fact, there's not really too many promising examples that they can really point to.
Michael, so far, a civilian press aide to General McCrystal has resigned in the light of your article. Right now, I know you're in Kandahar, you're in Afghanistan with plans to be there for some time. Do you have any expectation of what the other fallout of this might be?
I've been surprised, quite honestly, about the fallout that's happened after this article, since the story. I mean, the story just actually got published a few hours ago, I think, online. So I've been quite surprised by it. I'm not sure what the actual fallout's going to be. I think it's you know, the way this is playing out, it raises some interesting questions.
Of course, the way that General McCrystal got this job is because General McKiernan was rather summarily relieved of his responsibility in Afghanistan, the previous top commander in country. Does the counterinsurgency doctrine and strategy survive another change at the top if it has to happen? Are there enough true believers just among the ranks of soldiers and officers who you've been dealing with there while you've been reporting?
I think counterinsurgency is the only solution that they've come up with that they really want to do. It seems like there's not much stomach for actually changing our strategy, drawing down, say, 50,000 and doing more counterterrorism missions. You know, yeah, I think you change the top, but the problem remains. I mean, I think, you know, the counterinsurgency strategy was set in motion, and I believe even if you change the top, it's not going to make too much of a difference, because I think the problem with these things, when it's these things I'm talking about, these sort of long, protracted conflicts in democratic societies waged usually in, you know, developing nations, is that they take on a momentum of their own. We went into Afghanistan after September 11th with the explicit goal not to get stuck in a quagmire, and anyone who even used the word quagmire was mocked mercilessly. 10 years later, we're exactly what we set out not to be, in a quagmire, and it's a quagmire we knowingly walked into.
Michael Hastings joining us by phone from Kandahar. His latest reporting for Rolling Stone magazine, an article called The Runaway General, has turned the news and American politics and the war effort upside down today because of this unprecedented access he received to General McCrystal and his inner circle. Michael, take care of yourself. Congratulations on this scoop, and good luck.
Thank you.